11 canned foods are getting more expensive before this autumn, and most people have no idea it's already happening. Not one at a time. Not from a single cause. All 11, simultaneously, for different reasons that all point in the same direction. I checked the Office for National Statistics data, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs supply reports, and the British Retail Consortium's pricing numbers. Same answer every time. 11 products, 11 closing windows. Here are all of them. And the first one is going to make you roll your eyes. Don't. Number 11, evaporated milk. You probably just associated that with a tin in your grand's kitchen, a wartime recipe, something nobody actually buys anymore. That association is wrong, and the supply data proves it. Evaporated milk is among the most purchased shelf-stable dairy products in the UK. It sells in every major supermarket every single week. And right now, it's being squeezed from two completely separate directions at the same time. The first squeeze is what's inside the can. The Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board reported dairy farm closures accelerating through 2023 and 2024 as operating costs outpaced farm gate prices. Milk powder, a primary input for evaporated milk processing, is significantly imported and already absorbing post-Brexit customs costs. The wholesale price of evaporated milk inputs has not come down. The second squeeze is the can itself. Energy cost increases across European tin plate smelting, pushed can manufacturing costs sharply higher through 2022 and 2023. The president of the Can Manufacturers Institute said on the record that the industry expected larger price increases in 2026 than it saw in 2025. The container is roughly a third of wholesale cost on a product like this. Both the ingredient and the packaging are under pressure simultaneously. Here's the history. Carnation evaporated milk has been sold in the UK since 1899. It was part of Royal Air Force standard rations in the Second World War. For over 125 years, it has been the most shelf-stable, calorie-dense dairy option available to British households. One cup gives you roughly 340 calories, 17 grams of protein, and solid calcium content. It works as a cooking fat substitute, a coffee base, a soup starter, a baking liquid. More practical uses per tin than almost anything else at that shelf price. Buy full fat, not fat-free. Evaporated, not condensed. The added sugar in condensed milk limits how you can use it. Cases of 24 are still near historical pricing. Store between 10 and 21 degrees, dark and dry. Shelf life is 12 to 24 months. That window is open. It won't stay that way. Number 10 is a different pressure entirely. Number 10, canned coconut milk. You might not think of this as a kitchen staple, but it's now in over 40% of UK households' regular shops, according to Kantar World Panel. The category moved from specialist aisle to weekly basket in under a decade. Its supply chain did not keep pace with that shift. The UK sources the vast majority of its canned coconut milk from Thailand, Sri Lanka, and the Philippines. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization has been tracking the spread of coconut lethal yellowing disease across Southeast Asian growing regions, a phytoplasma infection that kills mature coconut trees with no effective treatment and replanting timelines of 7 to 10 years. Hundreds of thousands of trees were lost in Thailand alone between 2018 and 2023. Stacked on top of that, the Drewry World Container Index recorded Asia to Europe freight rates rising over 300% between 2020 and 2022. They partially corrected, then Red Sea disruption pushed rates back up sharply in early 2024. Coconut milk in heavy tins is disproportionately exposed to freight cost movements. Then add this. Sri Lanka's economic crisis in 2022 and 2023 severely disrupted its agricultural export infrastructure. Processing capacity has been slow to recover. 3 separate pressures on one product. One can of full-fat coconut milk is roughly 445 calories. Fat, predominantly medium-chain triglycerides, fast accessible energy. It works as a rice base, curry starter, and calorie booster. Shelf life is 2 to 5 years unopened. Full fat only, not light, not carton. Cartons are diluted and stored differently. Check for BPA-free lining where you can find it. Buy in cases. Take the furthest best before date on the shelf. Number 9 has been quietly building for longer than most people realize. Number 9. Canned chickpeas. The backbone of budget cooking in the UK, hummus, curries, stews, salads. You probably assume supply is stable because they grow in warm climates, and warm climates are abundant. That assumption is the problem. The UK sources primarily from Turkey and Canada, with India as a growing third channel. The Turkish Statistical Institute recorded drought-driven harvest contractions in central Anatolia, the world's most productive chickpea region, in 2021 and 2023, with volumes down approximately 25 to 30% from recent peaks. Turkey has been managing export allocations more conservatively since. Canada is a different story. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada described the 2021 prairie drought as among the worst in 50 years, and pulse crop recovery has run slower than initial forecasts. Then, add the post-Brexit tariff structure. Chickpeas from non-preferential trade partners now carry import duties that did not apply before 2021. That cost is permanent. It does not reverse when harvests improve. This is the part that gets buried. People have been growing chickpeas in the Fertile Crescent for 7,500 years. Every major pre-refrigeration civilization in that region built its protein supply around legumes. The nutritional data shows exactly why. One 400 gram can contain approximately 23 grams of protein, 14 grams of fiber, iron, folate, and phosphorus. It is one of the most complete plant proteins available in a can, at any price. Two things most people get wrong. First, buy no salt added. Sodium limits how you can use it. Second, do not pour the brine away. Aquafaba, the liquid in the can, works as a functional egg substitute in baking. In any situation where eggs get expensive, that brine has real practical value. Do not pour it down the sink. Buy branded, buy in brine, buy cases of 12, store in a cool, dark cupboard. Not a garage where temperature fluctuates. Number 8 is a policy story, and the policy has already been decided. Number 8, canned mackerel, the fish nobody buys. The one that sits on the bottom shelf and barely moves. That invisibility is the tell. The items nobody's watching are always the first to go quietly. The Marine Stewardship Council put Northeast Atlantic mackerel certification under review between 2019 and 2023 due to quota disputes between the United Kingdom, Norway, the Faroe Islands, and Iceland. Each party independently set catch limits above scientifically recommended levels. The United Kingdom's departure from the European Union's common fisheries policy created an allocation dispute that is not fully resolved. The history matters here. Mackerel has been a working-class British staple for over 200 years. London street vendors sold fresh mackerel door-to-door throughout the 1800s. It was a standard school dinner protein in the 1950s and on the National Health Service recommended nutrition list into the 1980s. The Scottish and Cornish canning operations that processed British caught mackerel have largely moved to Eastern Europe and Norway. Catches leave United Kingdom shores and come back as finished product on a supply chain that is longer and more fragile than it has any right to be for a fish caught in home waters. Marine Stewardship Council certification affects retail listing decisions directly. United Kingdom supermarkets have sustainability sourcing commitments. A mackerel that loses certification faces delisting before the price even moves. 125 gram can contain approximately 30 grams of protein, 18 grams of fat, largely omega-3, and over 100% of the recommended daily B12 intake. Nothing else in that aisle matches this nutritional profile at this price. Nothing. Buy it in brine, not tomato sauce. Acid in tomato sauce degrades the can lining and shortens shelf life. Brine gives you 3 to 5 years. Marine Stewardship Council certified. Atlantic mackerel from Norwegian or Scottish sources while those channels are still available. A case of 12 before the autumn contract windows close. Hold on to that pattern. you are going to see it show up in a different form 7 more times. Before we get into number 7, which of these first 4 are you already keeping on the shelf? And which one genuinely caught you out? Drop it in the comments. If this is giving you a clearer picture of what is actually coming, a like gets it in front of other people before prices move. Number 7, canned corned beef. Most people don't have this on any list at all. That's about to change, and the reason is already showing up in the beef price data. Brazil supplies approximately 70 to 75% of the canned corned beef sold in the UK, according to HMRC import data. The product arrives as finished canned goods, not raw beef, meaning UK processors have no role in the supply chain and no buffer against external disruption. The Brazilian real has depreciated against the pound, which initially kept import prices low. But energy and feed costs inside Brazil have risen faster than the currency has fallen. The margin that was protecting UK shelf prices has compressed significantly. Then, a second layer, a UK-Brazil trade deal under negotiation in 2024 could reclassify beef import tariff categories. A change that would raise costs at the border regardless of what is happening inside Brazilian agriculture. The history: canned corned beef has been a British military ration since the Boer War in 1899. It became a civilian pantry staple through both world wars. The trapezoidal tin shape was patented specifically for space efficiency in military logistics. British working-class families ate this for 2 centuries before it became associated with emergency preparedness. Pacific Island communities built entire food cultures around it through American military supply chains in the mid-20th century, and understood its value long before Western preparedness culture caught up. A 340-gram tin contains approximately 65 grams of protein, and significant iron, zinc, and B12. Its protein per penny ratio is among the best in any UK supermarket at current pricing. Buy the 340-gram tin, not the 200-gram. Choose Frey Bentos or Prince's branded cans over own label. Avoid sliced or reformed variants. Check every can. A dented seam is a broken seal. Stock a minimum of 6 tins before August. Number 6 is where the budget kitchen starts feeling real pressure. Number 6. Canned kidney beans. The thing in a chili. The protein that makes a meal stretch on a tight week. If you feed a family on a real budget, you know exactly what this does for you. What you probably don't know is what's happening to the supply chain behind it. The UK sources primarily from Argentina and China, with processing typically in China before export. UN Comtrade data shows UK bean imports from Argentina dropped sharply in 2022 and 2023 following severe drought in the Pampas. Argentina's National Agricultural Technology Institute described it as the worst drought in 60 years. At the same time, trade relations between the UK and China have introduced tariff uncertainty that processors are pricing into long-term contract terms. That's one layer. The second, aluminium and tin plate prices rose sharply in 2021 and 2022 as European energy costs spiked. The British Metals Recycling Association noted sharp increases in can manufacturing costs. That structural cost has not fully unwound. Kidney beans entered British working-class cooking in significant volumes in the 1970s, through Caribbean migration and the rise of chili con carne as a home staple. By the 1980s, they were a standard NHS dietary recommendation for managing cholesterol and blood sugar. A 400-gram can contain approximately 24 grams of protein, 16 grams of fiber, and folate, currently still below a pound. That price point is not guaranteed. Buy in brine or water, not sauce. Only ingredients should be kidney beans, water, and salt. Cases of 12. Rotate every 12 months. If your usual brand disappears from the shelf, substitute with black beans, which come from a different growing region and currently face lower supply pressure. Number 5 is where every pressure type on this list starts arriving in the same place at once. Number 5. Canned sardines. This is the product where the pattern becomes visible. Tariff pressure, climate pressure, quota reduction. container costs. All of them arriving simultaneously on one item. Watch what that means. Portugal supplies the majority of premium canned sardines in the UK, with Morocco as the second largest source. The International Council for the Exploration of the Sea has been issuing warnings that European sardine stocks are below precautionary levels in the Northeast Atlantic since approximately 2016, with biomass estimates declining significantly from peaks in the 1990s. Portuguese catches have faced progressive quota reductions in response. The sardine has been a documented food staple in the British Isles since at least the Tudor period. Cornish pilchards, a mature sardine, were exported from Cornwall to Catholic Europe during Lent for over 400 years. Canned Cornish sardines were produced commercially from the 1880s. The last Cornish canning operation closed in the 1990s. What was once a domestic staple is now entirely import-dependent, and those imports are under strain from multiple directions simultaneously. Steel tin plate for sardine cans, thinner gauge than larger tins, has seen cost increases tied directly to European energy price volatility. Manufacturing is concentrated in Portugal and Morocco. Energy-intensive processing has been directly affected. One more thing on sardines specifically, and this changes how you should think about stocking them. Sardines packed in olive oil actually improve in flavor for the first 12 to 18 months after canning. The oil and fish proteins slowly integrate in a way that makes the eating quality better, not worse. There are people in Portugal who deliberately age sardine tins the same way others age wine, seeking out specific years. Stocking sardines isn't settling. In the short term, you might end up with something better. A 100-gram can in olive oil contains approximately 25 grams of protein, 12 grams of omega-3 fats, vitamin D, and bone in calcium. It is arguably the highest micronutrient density of anything on a UK supermarket shelf. Olive oil packed only, not soy, which oxidizes faster. Wild caught, bone-in, MSC certified. Cases of 12 minimum. Store cool and dark. Leave them alone for 12 months, then open one. 5 items, 5 different pressure types. Tin costs, quota disputes, Brazilian supply contracts, Southeast Asian freight, Andean drought. None of the same cause, all pointing in the same direction. And number 4 is the one most people already have at home, which makes what's happening to it more urgent, not less. Number 4. Canned tuna. The most consumed tinned fish in the UK. The default protein in half the lunches in this country. The issue is not that you have it. It is how much less you have than you should, given what has already happened to the supply chain behind it. The UK imports the majority of its tinned seafood. Tuna processing runs through Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and increasingly India. According to the International Seafood Sustainability Foundation, skipjack tuna, the primary species in canned product, experienced stock pressure in the West and Central Pacific in 2022 and 2023, following El Niño conditions that disrupted migration patterns and reduced catch rates. The political layer. Post-Brexit importers now navigate separate bilateral access agreements, where EU fishing vessels previously moved tuna into a shared processing and customs framework. That adds cost and reduces flexibility at exactly the moment supply chains need to be more agile, not less. Several major UK supermarkets have sustainability sourcing commitments restricting them to pole and line or FAD-free catch methods. As cheaper commodity tuna gets harder to source at the required standard, they face a choice: absorb the cost, change supplier, or cut SKU range. A 145-gram can of springwater tuna has approximately 32 grams of protein, under 1 gram of fat, and a full daily supply of vitamin B12 and selenium. One of the most nutritionally efficient products in any UK supermarket. Buy in spring water, not brine or oil. Choose Poland Line or MSC certified. Choose branded over own label. Cases of 24. Write the purchase date on the lid. Store between 10 and 21 degrees Celsius. Rotate, first in, first out. The price you lock in today stays locked. What you pay next year will not be the same number. Number 3. Canned salmon. not the fresh fillet. The tin. It has been on British shelves in some form since the 1880s, when Scottish canneries were processing North Atlantic catch and shipping it as far as Australia. You might think of this as settled, reliable background noise. Here is what makes this item different from everything else on this list. The window is not just closing from the trade side, it is closing from the environmental side at the same time. Pink and sockeye salmon, the primary species in UK canned product, are caught predominantly in Alaskan and British Columbian waters. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game reported pink salmon returns in 2023 significantly below the 10-year average, with biologists citing warming Gulf of Alaska temperatures. The Pacific Salmon Commission has been operating under stock conservation measures that have progressively tightened annual catch allocations since approximately 2018. The Canadian government imposed stricter harvest limitations in British Columbia in 2023 to protect endangered Chinook populations, restrictions affecting the mixed stock fisheries that supply canning operations. Here is the part that stayed with me longest. When trade pressure eases, if it eases, the wild salmon supply those lower costs apply to will be physically smaller than what is available today. Trade policy raises the cost of what exists. Ocean warming reduces how much exists. This window is closing from both ends simultaneously. By 1900, canned salmon was cheaper per calorie than bread in some northern industrial towns. Billingsgate market records from the 1920s show it as the most traded preserved protein in London, ahead of corned beef, ahead of sardines. This was foundational. A 213-gram can of wild-caught pink salmon contains approximately 40 grams of protein, significant omega-3 fatty acids, and bone and calcium at roughly 400 milligrams per serving. No cheaper calcium source is available in British retail. Choose wild-caught Alaskan pink or red sockeye in a tin, not a pouch, and look for the label text Wild-Caught Alaska. Avoid own label Atlantic salmon. It is farmed with a different nutritional profile and different risk exposure. Buy cases of 12. A 3 to 5 year shelf life means holding stock genuinely makes sense here. Number 2. Canned chopped tomatoes. The item in more UK kitchen cupboards than anything else on this list. The base of bolognese, curry, soup, shakshuka. The product you always have a spare tin of and never think about twice. 3 pressures, all converging, all right now. The first is the harvest. Italy supplies the vast majority of UK canned tomatoes, primarily from the Po Valley and Campania. Italy's National Institute of Statistics reported tomato processing volumes affected by consecutive summer heat events in 2022 and 2023, with temperatures in the Po Valley reaching levels the European Geosciences Union described as the highest in over 500 years of recorded Italian climate data. Yield reductions in affected years ran approximately 15 to 25% below the 10-year average. The second is trade friction. Post-Brexit, the UK and EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement introduced rules of origin requirements and customs friction that add direct cost to processed food arriving from EU member states. That cost is structural. It did not exist before 2021. The third is energy. Italian tomato processing involves large-scale industrial canning at high temperatures. Energy costs across Italian food processing surged following the 2022 European energy crisis. They have not fully unwound. Italy has been canning tomatoes for British consumption since the 1880s. Cross and Blackwell were importing Italian tomato products before the First World War. The San Marzano plum tomato featured in official NHS dietary guidance by 1970. This is the foundation ingredient of British home cooking for over 100 years. 3 separate cost pressures hitting it at the same time. Here is the one buying shift that changes your approach. Tomato paste is roughly 3 times concentrated compared to chopped or crushed. 1 can of paste does the work of 3 cans of chopped in any recipe. Same shelf space. 3 times the output. Switch your longer-term buying to paste and rotate chopped tomatoes through everyday cooking. Skip diced for long-term storage. The calcium chloride that keeps the cubes firm degrades flavor over time. Prodotto d'Italia on the label or the Italian flag. No added citric acid or calcium chloride. No salt paste by the case. That is the move. The pattern behind all of this becomes clear with number 1. And once you see it, it reframes every item you've already heard today. Go back through the list. Sardines in olive oil, tuna in olive oil, mackerel in brine. Every preserved product needs a fat medium, a carrier, a seal. Number 1 is where all of that connects. Number 1, olive oil in tins. This is the one I spent the most time on when the research was done. Not because it was the most complicated, because every time I thought I had the full picture, there was another layer underneath it. And every layer made the one before it worse. Start with what already happened. Mediterranean drought pushed global olive oil prices to roughly double their pre-2022 levels. Spain, Italy, and Greece all had catastrophic harvest contractions in back-to-back years. The Spanish Ministry of Agriculture reported yields down over 50% in 2023, compared to the decade average. Prices had only just started recovering. Then, the trade situation arrived on top of that. The UK sources approximately 95% of its olive oil from Spain, Italy, and Greece, all EU member states. Post-Brexit rules of origin requirements and customs friction under the UK-EU trade and cooperation agreement have added administrative cost to every container of olive oil entering the country. That cost sits on top of a market already strained from the worst consecutive Mediterranean harvest failures in living memory. The ONS food price data shows olive oil as one of the fastest rising grocery categories over the 24-month period to early 2024. That gap between olive oil inflation and general food inflation is structural and widening. Here is the layer that took longest to register, and it is why olive oil is number 1. If you are buying sardines in olive oil, tuna in olive oil, mackerel in oil, you are already exposed to this. The can cost is up, the oil cost is up. 2 of the 3 main production inputs for those products are under simultaneous pressure. Olive oil does not just affect olive oil, it affects the cost structure of everything packed in it. That compounding exposure is what puts it at the top of this list. 1 tablespoon, 120 calories, 14 grams of fat, predominantly monounsaturated oleic acid. The oleocanthal in extra virgin olive oil has documented anti-inflammatory properties. In any situation where cooking setup is limited, a calorie-dense fat that stores at room temperature is not a luxury item. It is infrastructure. Eat it cold, cook with it, add it to any liquid as a calorie boost, use it to preserve other foods. Archaeologists have confirmed Roman-era olive oil in sealed vessels still edible. 3,000 years of documented storage. The shelf life claims are not marketing, they are proven. Buy it in tins, not glass, not plastic. Light degrades olive oil faster than anything else, and tins block it completely. Extra virgin, sealed tin, stored cool and dark, holds reliably for 18 to 24 months, often longer. Look for the harvest date on the label, not just the best before. A harvest date within 18 months of purchase is the quality benchmark. And buy the canned sardines and tuna packed in olive oil alongside it. They are dual-use items. The food and the fat are in the same can. Here is what the entire list has been showing you. The pressure is not coming from one direction. Mediterranean drought, post-Brexit trade friction, North Atlantic quota cuts, Southeast Asian container costs, Brazilian currency dynamics, Italian energy costs, are all arriving in the same aisle at the same time. And at the top of that convergence sits a product that threads through 6 items on this list. That was not random, that was the pattern. This week, wild-caught tuna in spring water, sardines in olive oil, and wild-caught salmon. These 3 have the most direct and immediate supply exposure. Buy by the case, not individual tins. If you find wild-caught salmon or olive oil sardines at current pricing, treat it like a buying opportunity. That price structure is not permanent. This month, canned chickpeas, tomato paste in bulk, full-fat coconut milk in tins, canned corned beef. Supply disruption on these four typically arrives 4 to 6 weeks behind the initial cost wave. The window is open, but narrowing. Before the end of August, evaporated milk by the case, mackerel in brine, olive oil in tins. SKU reductions on these products typically align with summer retail contract repricing, usually June through August. Buy now while full range and current pricing both exist. Every grocery run until then. Tomato paste and kidney beans. Cases, not singles until you have a meaningful supply at today's cost. The infrastructure is there. The products are on shelves. The nutrition, the shelf life, the flexibility, all of it available right now at prices that will look very reasonable in hindsight. The only thing on this list that won't keep at today's cost is the cost itself. Which one goes in the cart first this week? Tuna, sardines, or olive oil? Tell me in the comments.